got Lulu in the chat. Let's do it.
Hey,
there she is.
How you doing?
Hey, good to see you.
Welcome to the Temple of Technology. We're live. You're
The Fortress
live.
of Finance.
The Fortress of Finance. The capital of capital. Great to see you.
I'm
much to
kind
talk
of
about.
surprised it took this long to
I
get
know.
you on the show.
Former brother of the year, 2024. And for some reason, we had to do 75 guests before we could get you to sit down. What happened?
I had to make sure the show is good.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I big dogging us.
She big dogged us.
It's reasonable.
Fair.
But we're glad you could take time out of your incredibly busy day to sit down with us, chat. There's so much to talk about. I want to talk about the comms around Saratoga water. I want to talk about morning routines. Did you wake up at 3:40 this morning and dive directly into a pool, or are you taking a little bit slower today?
No, every morning I dive for 5 minutes.
Yep.
I think the medium mid-air suspension is 4. I like to go for 5, sometimes 7.
Fantastic.
But average 5 for me.
Great.
I dip my face like every 10 minutes.
Yep.
I think just got to go a little bit above and beyond, stay ahead of the pack, rub the banana peel. I don't just do the face, I do the neck, get behind the ears. So fully ready for this show.
Always taking it to the next level. What do you had critiqued that Saratoga water, their last post was hashtag soup. You described it.
Yep.
How, if they were a client, do you have anything particularly that you would have advised them on of what they could have done better?
Yeah, I don't have any fancy water companies in my portfolio, so I'm not get on that.
You might get a call later today.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not fully diversified yet. I thought I was. Okay, I think they just have to wake up here. There's somebody whose job is to run social for them. I'm sure there's like a person whose area of responsibility is this, and they were just completely out of the game. Like some people said they were on Instagram, but on is pretty generous there. Like they were present on Instagram with a check mark. The posts weren't actually that good. I think there's some brands that are like boycotting X because of Elon, whatever, but you're just kind of hurting yourself. Like it's like you're owning your own balance sheet to try to own Elon. You're owning your own cash flow because you're mad at Elon. Just like go on X, make money, do what you need to do. Forget about your personal feelings. I don't know if that's actually the reason, but if it is, it's a bad reason.
It does feel like it's a bit of a 15 minutes of fame moment for them. And so I wonder, like, what is the good ending here? Like, they quote tweet the video, they lean in, they're making jokes, they capture a bunch of, attention. Maybe they grow their account from 1,000 followers to even like 100K because it's such a viral moment and a billion people saw the morning routine. But then what do they do with that after that?
I think they have to. Okay, I think the gold standard for this before the famous rug was the Haktua girl.
Totally.
Like she took the 15 minutes and just extended it beyond what the laws of physics seem to suggest was possible.
Yep.
And I think what the water company could have done here to extend would be like lean into the routine, like partner on some routines, lean into the unhinged. Like I know that they're this sophisticated, fancy type of person, but still sometimes you just got to roll with it. Strike up some partnerships, have like follow-on content, like lean into the funny, just do the bar is like literally anything. And then it's like getting creative, and then it's like something really enduring. And if they want to do something really enduring, maybe it's like a program, maybe it's like some pop-up stuff to just stay top of mind. But the actual bar of just like showing a pulse was not that hard to hit.
Yeah, I feel like the challenge is, I have no idea what Saratoga's brand stands for, but now in my mind, it stands for getting up at 3:45, putting the banana on your face, having 4 minutes of airtime. And so it's almost like I'm the most water obsessed person that I know by a long shot. And I didn't know what they stood for before. It's almost like the right thing to do is the right deal to do is you just say, hey, we're going to kind of scrap our brand from the last 200 years. I think they're a very old company. We're now the Ashton brand. We're signing him to a maxed out.
It's just 150.
8-figure.
Just 150.
Yeah, it's a 150-year-old brand.
1872.
Well, listen, it's time for a refresh. Do a brand partnership with Chiquita Banana.
That'd be great.
There we go.
Yeah.
Do the banana collab. You could be doing like some people commented when he opens up the journal, he's on page 1 of his journal.
Oh yeah.
Like a Notion partnership. That
there
like the
go.
world is your oyster here. There's a lot you could do.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you created a meme going direct. I feel like it's one of the most powerful.
Yeah.
Like basically
Wasn't
memes.
it our trend of the year?
potentially trend of the year. I mean, that and founder mode are the two.
Yeah.
When you think about things that have sort of influenced founder thought in the last 5 years, it happens to be, in my view, going direct and founder mode.
Totally.
And they go hand in hand. Have you? I'm sure you're already thinking about sort of what the next play is. Is the next play going indirect?
Going
and
indirect.
Sort of like it going
getting puff pieces.
Getting puff pieces and stuff like that. What do you think is now that sort of this sort of like way of comms has become the standard? Is this just the enduring approach for the next however many years until we get better institutions? Or
you got to always outrun yourselves. I'm really glad you brought this up. We did not coordinate by the way. Like, you guys gave me virtually nothing to prepare with and no talk points. I came in like fully unprepared. Thank you. So we didn't coordinate, but I actually had been thinking about this because Rastra launched around a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. And in that intervening year, founder mode has kind of become part of the canon. Like, it's here, it's not evenly distributed. Maybe Deloitte is not going direct, but like founders going direct is now part of the default playbook for comms. Like, any YC company that's coming out into the world today, they're thinking the founder is going to go direct. But the thing is, you have to outrun yourself. Like, once something becomes the thing that everybody does, that becomes the new norm. And you always want to be standing up above the norm. Like, I remember for a while last year, I was doing manifestos. I was having all of like my founders and my companies do manifestos. And then for a 3-month span, it was just like every other week a manifesto. It actually became, I kind of got like manifestoed out, and same with like the secret plans.
Same with the vibe reels, same thing, kind of burn through them.
That one happened really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone.
Yeah. Well, so how do you think so?
No more
so
montage reels, guys.
Yeah. So we just had Guillermo on. Vercel creates Next.js. They release it to the world, and then they say, yeah, we'll manage it for you if you want, or you can just use it by yourself. You basically open source the concept of going direct, but then you have sort of playbooks that you run with your founders. Is there anything else that, the thing about something like going direct is you can tell somebody any sort of like highly specialized skill set.
Double fisting Celsius? What is that in front of your hands?
I go yerba
Celsius,
mate.
You got the yerba.
John goes Celsius.
Yeah.
That's
nice.
That's pretty reflective of our brands.
Sorry, it triggered me because the week before last I had two. I didn't know how caffeinated.
Oh, they have a lot of caffeine in there.
I needed like a defibrillator.
Oh yeah,
12 Red Bulls.
400. Yeah, it is 6 Red Bulls, I think, technically. Who's counting though?
Yeah, gotta be careful.
Sorry, Jordy,
no, but the idea is like, is there other things that maybe fall outside of that you feel like you can sort of like open source, like things that you can just tell the world? They're very hard to execute, so they should still go to your firm to actually pull them off. But what else are you thinking about, kind of like open sourcing?
Yeah, or they can just do it. I like the concept of open sourcing. Like, in fact, you should be able to do it by yourself. Whether I get hit by a bus or your team gets hit by gets hit by a bus, it should never just like rest on any one person. I think the next era. So going direct was probably the big thing for the last year. I think the next era is, in shorthand, attention is all you need. Like, in a world where AI can just do anything all the time, you can see people like shipping and launching stuff. It used to be monthly, then weekly, and now daily. There's just like huge drops all the time. And it's a tree falling quietly in the forest unless you can get people to actually care about it. So the two things are, number one, how to get the attention and just like focus it for a small period of time. And then number two, how to harvest it and turn it into something. Like, the big mistake that founders make is they'll do something to catch a little bit of attention and then it goes away. Like we were talking about Saratoga water, it goes away and you didn't do anything with it. So you're doing like attention catch and release, California with illegal migrants, or like sports fishing. Like, don't do the catch and release, hold on to the attention and turn it into money. Like, your job is turning attention into money.
I mean, that's the beauty of the Ashton Hall thing. He went super viral, but he already had been on Instagram for 5 years, had millions of followers over there. He goes super viral. He already has a whole business set up on coaching and fitness stuff. Like, there is a funnel. And if you found him from this X post, you're going to be paying him if you like him very quickly. Yeah. Whereas with Hawk Tua Girl, we were talking about this, like, she had to spin up a podcast. And then I'm sure at a certain point she was like, well, this crypto thing seems like a good way to make money. Whereas Ashton already has a business and can just go capitalize capitalize on
we got
all
a
of it right
delivery
now.
here.
Oh,
thank you, Brent.
brother. Here we go. We got the Saratoga.
You guys should do
There
the
we
dunk
go.
lives, the new ice bucket
Yeah,
challenge.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
we
we'll
also
do
need
that.
bowls to dunk our face in.
Yeah, we definitely do.
So here's a question for you that I think is actually an interesting one. So the three of us are dear friends with David Senra, and David has sort of studied all these entrepreneurs that were able to build these massive careers or massive sort of family empires completely in silence, right? He made a post. He made a post 2 weeks ago that was something to the effect of, like, I talked to this family. They had written biographies about the family, and he asked if he could do an episode on them, and they were like, absolutely not. We're not giving away our sort of secrets. Do you think that, do you think that the playbook of just sort of like building in silence and you're sort of in the shadows and nobody, and not really sharing what you're working on, do you think businesses like that will there seems like there's tons of examples throughout history, but that was pre-internet, right? If you take the strategy of we're going to kind of like build in silence, be very secretive, does that playbook work when you have 10 competitors that are going to be extremely loud, constantly sort of like accumulating attention? And I just wonder if that's sort of a pre-internet strategy.
So the thing here is, right, one day soon, maybe you'll have the one person billion-dollar company, but for now, the company that wins is the company that can recruit and attract the best talent. And the pool of super elite differentiated talent is pretty concentrated, and they're all being headhunted by like the same firms. And so the way to get ahead is to get that talent before your competitors can, and they'll join you if they know you and trust you and believe in you. And so if you're someone who's already a household name, like if Palmer Luckey went silent for a while, it'd be fine because people know what he's about. Ilya Sutskever has been silent for quite a while, and people know you don't have to try to figure out like, what am I going to get if I try to go work for them? And they have like demand knocking down on their doors. But if you don't have that, then you do need to build it. And I think where your question is coming from too is like, we see a lot of founders get dunked on for like yapping too much and posting too much. And it's like, when are you building your company? You're tweeting like every hour. And I think the one thing to know is it's not about how much you yap. It's about the ship yap ratio. You have to respect the ship yap ratio. And if the ratio is right, you can get away with anything.
That's great.
Elon's a perfect example of this.
Yeah,
Nobody's
totally.
like, hey, you're posting, 20 times an hour.
So
relax.
the rockets are going up.
Okay, the rockets are being caught.
The rockets are being caught. It's sitting in the chopsticks. He can post what he wants.
On going direct, I've always thought that there's a little bit more nuance there. Obviously, it's really key to tell someone that, like, hey, it's okay to start posting and going direct and doing founder-led communications, but that doesn't mean that you should close off the indirect channels. And I see it almost as like tiers or levels. So level one is like you start telling the world what you're building, build some credibility. Maybe there's some posts on X from the founder's account. Then you start doing new media, like podcasts like this, calling in, telling, you're using other people's platforms, but you're accelerating. And then eventually the traditional media comes in and writes like the big profile. And that still has a lot of benefit. Can you talk to us about how founders should think about riding up that curve and where the value is across all three of those?
Yeah. So roughly, you want to think of it as like concentric circles going outwards.
Sure.
And you cannot mess up the order. So the innermost circle is your co-founders and executives and the people who work for you, and they have to believe, and you have to fully saturate them with the propaganda and the sense of mission before you go out to the next circle. Next circle maybe is investors board, and then you get to customers, and then you get to maybe regulators, maybe other people. But the problem with trying to skip one of these in the sequence is, let's say that you didn't brief, let's say that you're launching like a new mission and you didn't brief your employees on this refreshed mission, but you go to the press and now your employees are reading it in the press and there's a disconnect. Two things can happen. One, they're like, WTF, this isn't what I signed up for. Now you have a world of pain because any pain coming from inside the house is like 1,000 times worse than external. And two, your employees have freedom of speech and they have Twitter accounts and they can go on X and post like, well, wait a second, are you sure this doesn't seem right? And then all of a sudden, everything downstream of employees has lost credibility because people figure if it's true, employees would know about it. And so sequencing it correctly and not getting too greedy too fast is really important. Like always go from the smaller circles to the outer circles.
That makes sense. How in terms of getting every company wants to get attention. The challenge is that there's some sort of cheap things that you can do that get massive amount of attention that are sort of like, basically like slop. Like I won't name it, but there was a launch video in the last 30 days that was just in my group chats was like super cringe, but then it got like millions of views, and I was looking at it, I'm like, all right, like this seems like cheap attention, but then maybe it just got so many views that it works. Talk about like taste when it comes to getting attention, and is there more longevity if you're sort of building that sort of slower base of sort of like tasteful releases and messaging and comms versus like the cheap high attention moments?
Yeah, tasteful vids. So there's two things. One is the crazy hot chart.
Yeah.
The crazy hot chart.
Of course.
Yeah.
Who does
there's like a company crazy hot chart where if you're really hot as a company, there's a lot that you can get away with. But if you're new and people don't know a lot about you, then every single thing you do or say is like disproportionately affecting how they think of you. And so if you have a 10-year history of just like wins and bangers, and you have one thing that is kind of weird or flop or a little bit cringy, you can kind of get away with it. It gets absorbed a little bit better. But if your company is launching for the first time and the one thing people see is 100% of the data points that they have about you, you can't really afford that. So I'm not saying don't take risks. I'm saying that the importance of taste goes up like even more when you're new and there's not a lot of data points about you. And then the second thing about just taste versus quantity is a lot of things that get a ton of likes and engagement are just total garbage. And the responses are all like bots. Like if you go to a TechCrunch X post and look at the replies, it's just straight up bot replies. If you go to these like framework bros, or I don't know, the like mental model bros.
Sure.
Here's what happened this week, thread bros. Get a lot of engagement, but I would not trade that for the world. And so the thing to look for is like who is in the replies and who is not in the replies.
Yeah.
Because replies are usually really positive too, but it's positive from people that like it's a counter signal if they like it.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about signal, right? Signal.
Yeah.
Do you think the best sort of like going direct founder mode, to put it in one bucket, CEOs are sort of like born that way, and maybe you need to help uncover that ability of like sort of communicating their story to the world? Or is it something that anybody can figure out with sort of proper training and understanding sort of social mechanics and the platforms that we distribute content on and all that kind of thing?
Okay. There are different archetypes of super cracked, impressive founder that you want to just throw your life to the side and go follow them and do whatever it takes to get on that rocket ship kind of feeling. There's different archetypes of founders who can inspire that feeling. But the key is you can be in an archetype, but you can't be between archetypes. You can't be in the cringy, uncanny valley of here's the real you and here's the online you, and you're sort of like make it halfway there. You can be the like super brash, controversial, loud type. You can be the memey, funny type. You can be the strong, silent type of founders and just like one thing once a year. But if you're type 3 and you're trying to force yourself into type 1, it's going to be painful for everybody, like most of all you. And people can tell, right? So I think it's less about there's one type and you have to be it, and can you learn it or do you have to be born it? It's more like there's different types and you can fit into one of those types, but you can't try to jump from one type to another and kind of like fall into the abyss halfway in between.
Yeah, I think about the difference between like a David Holes and a Justin Mayers. Like Justin is doing threads, but they're very detailed on health and breaking stuff down. David Holes just shows up once a week and tweets something like about the future and how AI will like change.
Yeah, like alien civilizations.
Alien civilizations, but they're both great posters. But if they tried to swap, it would be really weird.
Yeah. You sometimes see people like online LARPing, as Palmer
totally.
like.
Yeah, they're trying to be someone else. Yep, exactly. They're like, I
I
want
have a
that
chip
brand.
on my shoulder.
And I always say this for the going direct thing is like, how do you communicate? Because there are some people who their authentic communication is best in a blog post or a long post. Other people can be really pithy and just post bangers. Other people are really great on video and should just do a podcast circuit. Other people are great on, national TV. And so figuring out where the founder sits and then accelerating that instead of being like, well, X is the popular one, so I got to figure that out. It can be very hard.
This is what we were talking about, and you were saying I should describe it as default out. Remember?
Yeah. Oh, default out. I don't remember that. Explain that.
Weren't we? You and I were.
Oh, yeah. Standard out.
You were talking. Oh,
yeah.
Right.
So in
like,
programming,
standard out as like a metaphor for the default. The default type of medium that somebody should use.
Yep.
And if they need to go outside of that, they can. But everybody has like a default medium, and you don't have to like only stick to that. Like you can go outside of it. Some of these like Andre Karpathy posts are actually a blog post and just dumps it into the Xbox and hits post and it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that's about the flexibility of the X platform, but there are definitely great CEOs out there whose like their default out should just actually being going and sitting down with, Andrew Ross Sorkin and doing an interview, and they will crush that. And if they and then that clip should live on X, and someone else should post that, but they should not try and turn it into a banger, hilarious post because that's just not authentic to who they are. I have a prompt for you. One of our 2025 goals is to get a glowing puff piece in a mainstream journalism outfit. What's the strategy for getting TBPN on the cover of the New York Times or the New Yorker? What should we do?
Or the journal would be.
The journal would be ideal. So how can we reverse engineer this? Take us through the steps.
I think Financial Times
that'd be great too
for you guys. I see you looking really nice with that salmon pink backdrop.
Oh yeah, that'd be fantastic. Okay, yeah. Financial Times. How do we get the profile done?
Okay, so the first question is, what is the business goal here? Like, how do you convert attention to money, right? And you guys convert attention. Okay, let's just work through it live. You guys convert attention to money by getting a lot of listeners so that you have leverage with advertisers, and then the advertisers pay you, and then it grows and continues being the most profitable podcast in the world.
That's the business, baby.
Number one question is, who are those marginal listeners? Are they people in tech that you haven't reached yet, and you're going to get more bang for buck by converting like people in tech who've been living in a cave and don't listen? Or are you going to go out and reach a new community that you haven't gotten into yet? Or are you going to go to some like in between, like adjacent community where it's people who let's say it's people in DC who now understand that half of Silicon Valley is in Washington, D.C., and they need to understand tech better. So it's like policy people who want to understand tech. So here's my first question to you is like, who is that next group of listeners that you're going after?
Probably slightly older public markets investors. We're pretty big in the private markets for tech, but moving we like to think of it as like YC Demo Day was our NFL Combine, earnings season is our Super Bowl, and so we want to deliver on a Super Bowl level event for TBPN covering public company earnings, Mag 7. That type of stuff.
So you want to go to sell side analysts, you want to go to the big banks, you want to go to probably the exchanges have some events, like New York Stock Exchange has events. You probably want things that are like Citadel adjacent, like D. Shaw adjacent to get into that community. And also there's a lot of overlap between young tech people and young hedge fund and quant trader people. Obviously like the young Jane Street people just go back and forth. And so if that's the audience, then I would work backwards, like reverse engineer this whole thing and think, okay, where are they getting their information? And what do they already care about that we can tap into? Like it's hellishly difficult to make people care about some new thing that they've just never heard of. Whereas, and Derek Thompson had this insight too, the best viral thing is something that's a little bit new, but a little bit familiar. So, okay, let's say that we're talking to those people. You're probably going to aim for, I mean, they'll read Wall Street Journal, they'll read Financial Times. Let's just say Journal because the paywall is less strict. Now you want to think about how do you fall into one of the coverage areas? Like, are you in tech? Are you in culture? Are you in finance or something? So there, for example, New York Times has a guy who is like between tech and culture. And so maybe someone like that. Or let's say it's the Journal and their tech, honestly, their tech desk, their tech team is in like shambles right now because they had this super bizarre layoff a few weeks ago. And it was just like a crazy management decision to lay off a bunch of AI and tech people at the cusp of AGI. It was crazy.
Weird.
So yeah. So maybe you want to aim for like culture, finance, and then now you're putting together two pieces. One piece is like, what do those young hedge fund analysts or whatever care about and what are they thinking about? They're probably trying to understand what's coming out of the tech world and which companies are worth watching versus which are not.
Yep.
And they can see publicly available information, which is very scant, but they're trying to read behind the scenes of like which founders are respected and how good are they really and can they recruit, that kind of thing. And then what does the paper cover? And the paper probably covers big trends and what's happening in the world of AI, like as we approach AGI, what are changes happening in the world? So, and then the third circle is like the unique perspective that you guys bring. So I would start by not doing a pitch at all, just vibing, networking, going out for drinks, chilling, and starting to talk about what's in the middle of that Venn diagram, which is like you had the unique experience. It's interesting to the people you're trying to reach, and it's interesting to what the journal has been covering. Do that like for 3 months or so, and then figure out one hook that's in the news, and then offer to do a deep dive into the hook, and then have somebody who's not you, like have somebody else that they respect who's in your network and their network, tell them, or like a me, or like a founder, or like an Eric Lyman, go to them and just tell them like this is the thing blowing up in tech and they should really take a deeper look. And at that point, you're familiar to them. Familiarity breeds affection, positive feelings, but it also breeds credibility. So people who are told a fact 10 times tend to believe that the fact is true just because they've heard it a lot. So at this point, you're familiar, you have the story dialed in, you have your unique area of expertise, and then you have some third-party validator telling them to look deper into it, and that's how it begins.
Well, thanks for coming on the most profitable podcast in the world.
Last one. I know we've got a minute left. We try not to swear on this show because swearing is vulgar.
Yes.
And we're very short, bearish, using cuss words online right now. How are you advising your clients in a world where, big names are thrown around mean words?
I think it's the same thing as before, which is like whichever bucket you're in, stay in the bucket. And if there's a founder who just talks like a sailor and that's how they are, you can try to ask them to clean it up. I've never seen that work. Okay. I've just never had an experience where someone tells the founder like clean up the potty mouth and talk different, and they actually do. Yeah. And so it's just, that's your archetype, you stay there. But I will say the big takeaway, if people are trying to figure out like what is the next era of comms, and just if there's one thing I as a founder need to know about building a cult and a movement around my company, it's we're entering the era of personality hires with respect and affection. You guys, ultimate personality hires. I'm one too. Safe space. It's okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to
that.
But in a world where AI is better than us at pretty much everything, every human is going to be a personality hire. So just figure out what your lane is and lean into that. And if you have that fire in you and you get into fights once in a while, it's not the worst thing. And if you don't try to LARP as Palmer Luckey and find the fights just so that you can have something to beef over. Just find your lane, be in the lane. Don't try to jump into a lane that is disingenuous and unnatural for you because people sniff it out.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I like that a lot. Authenticity, as silly as it sounds.
Great. Well, I have to say thank you for coming on. When your clients have historically that I'm aware of have come on the show, I'm sure there's been some that I'm not aware of that have come on the show. I always come away and just tell John, he was too media trained.
Too prepared.
He's just too prepared, too good. So you're doing great work, and thank you for being the former brother of the year and a friend of the show.
And we'll see what happens this year. Keep up the good work. You might be
just
two
to be
times.
clear. Just to be clear, it can be 2 times.
You need to do the ceremony. You need to do the ceremony where I go and put the crown, and then we all cry. And we have...
Well, I mean, we're gonna have a black tie event this year for the award show, and I'm sure you'll be invited.
That's it. Perfect. All right.
Fantastic.
Thanks, guys.
Amazing.
Well, thanks for stopping by.
Take care.
Bye.
That was great.